Section C rules do not apply to starting marks surrounded by navigable water, or at its anchor line from the time the boats are approaching at the start until they're past them. What that's trying to do is to stop those barges that come in from windward all the time. I know they're a pain, and they've really got no rights at all. So that means that the blue boat and the yellow boat in that scenario, under that preamble, have got no rights at all. Right? So there's no such thing as buoy room at a starting line. That's the simplest way of describing it. So when does Rule 18 apply? Rule 18 is about mark room. It applies between boats when they're required to leave a mark on the same side, and at least one of them is in the zone. At least one of them is in the zone. However, it does not apply. There are a few times that it doesn't. So Rule 18 does not apply between boats on opposite tacks on a beat to windward. So when you're on a beat to windward, and there's a mark there, from a legal sense, the mark doesn't exist. I know it's floating in the water, so it's a physical thing, but from a rules point of view, it's straight port and start, Rule 10. No more. Life would be simple if we could do like soccer kids' fathers do on Saturday morning and go out and paint a circle around each of our marks. Oh, work. Pity. I always thought that would be a good idea. Between boats on opposite tacks when the proper course of the mark for one but not both of them is to tack. So it's still opposite tacks. Between a boat approaching a mark and one leaving it. Makes common sense, doesn't it? If the mark is a continuing obstruction, in which case Rule 19 applies. Years ago, like when we were going around Montague Island, we used to say it was the lighthouse was the actual mark. So that the island itself became an obstruction rather than a mark. Rather than say you go around Montague Island. Sneaky little bugger. Giving mark room. When boats are overlapped, the outside boat shall give the inside boat mark room. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If boats are overlapped when the first of them reaches the zone, first of them, doesn't matter whether it's the longest, the shortest, or one in between. It's the first of them reaches the zone. The outside boat at that moment shall thereafter give the inside boat mark room. If a boat is clear ahead when she reaches the zone, the boat clear astern at that moment shall thereafter give her mark room. So the defining moment is when the first of them reaches that zone. And at that point, if you've got an inside overlap, you're entitled to room. If you don't have an inside overlap, you're not. So get the hell out of it. And if there's any doubt, like what Paul Elstrom found in 76, stay it. When a boat's required to give mark room by Rule 18.2b, she shall continue to do so even if later an overlap is broken or a new overlap has been established. So what the rule is saying, again it's simple and it's fair, if you're in that zone and you're clear ahead of everybody else, it's your mark. And you've got the right to go around it without interference by anybody else that hasn't got the overlap in their type of room. And that's the simple way to it. Or two, if she becomes overlapped inside the boat entitled to mark room, she shall also give that boat room to sail her proper course while they remain overlapped. So, if you establish an inside overlap and you're not entitled to room, you're not entitled to room, full stop. But if the boat entitled to mark room passes head to wind or leaves the zone, 18.2b ceases to apply. And that was where that one attacking at the mark that we referred to just before the break. Right? That's the only time when you're allowed to go beyond head to wind and you've still got rights. But the rights normally are before you get to the head to wind position. That's when you need the space. This is the killer. If there is reasonable doubt that a boat obtained or broken overlap in time, it shall be presumed that she did not. So that's the onus. The onus is there. If there's reasonable doubt that she obtained or broken overlap in time, it shall be presumed that she did not. So the presumption of guilt. If a boat obtained an inside overlap from clear astern, or by taking to windward of the other boat, and from the time the overlap began, the outside boat has been unable to give mark room, she's not required to give it. Common sense. In all my years of being involved in protests, I've never had one on that route. Mainly because people can't understand it. Oops. So, at that point, point one, right, blue's not in the zone, but yellow is. So that switches rule 18 on. Right? The first of them reaches the zone. And that means this boat's entitled to mark room all the way around, and until they've cleared the mark. Right? That's really what the rule is saying.
So does he have to call for mark room?
No. You don't have to call for anything. There's only one thing in life you've got to call for, and that's water or construction. We'll cover that. You used to have to call master beam. Some of the words I heard were master beam. Sorry, there is one other, that's protest. And you must use the word protest. Get stuff that's not qualified as protest. Attacking in the zone. If a boat in the zone passes head to wind and is then on the same tack as a boat that is fetching the mark, 18.2 does not thereafter apply between them. Tacking in the zone is a pretty dangerous manoeuvre, and I'll show you why. So what that will say is that the blue boat is tacking in the zone. Okay, he's gone beyond head to wind, and he hasn't yet reached close oar, but that doesn't matter, he's tacking in the zone. So therefore he's subject to Rule 13. And he can't interfere with this guy coming in here on the yellow boat. Boat that change tack shall not cause the other boat to sail above close haul to avoid it, contact or prevent the other one from passing the mark on the required side. I'll give you a little picture to explain this in a minute. And shall give mark room if the other boat becomes overlapped inside her. So there's one case where you can gain overlap without moving the two legs. So, let's say we've still got the blue boat who wants to tack in the zone. He hasn't learned his lesson yet. And he's got a boat that he's now forced to go above close haul to avoid him. So he's broken the rule once. Okay? He's got another boat that's coming in that can't go anywhere else other than below him. And he's got to give that boat room to go around that mark. So that's not a healthy thing to do. Attacking the zone. And yet again we see it every week. So he's run the risk of certainly breaking one rule against the green boat and maybe breaking the rule twice against the yellow boat. When an inside overlap right-of-way boat must drive at a mark to sail in a proper course. To sail in a proper course. Until she jives, she shall sail no farther from the mark than needed to sail that course. And this rule does not apply to gate marks. The reason for that is no one knows which mark you're going to go around. So we've got to turn her off with gate. But when you're jiving, and you're an inside boat, and head right away, you can't go further from the mark and leave to sail that course. If you're not jiving, and you're going to mark, you can take it all over the course. All over the course. Because the proper course got no proper course, or you're not breaking the proper course rule, you didn't establish that overlap underneath the course with Rule 17, then you card in everywhere. Mind you, 24 other bases on the mark, frankly, but depends on how you play the game. Room to pass an obstruction. Rule 19 applies between boats and obstruction, except when it is also a mark. The boats are required to leave on the same side. So except when it's also a mark, you're required to leave on the same side. However, a continuing obstruction, Rule 19 always applies, Rule 18 does not. That's why we put the lighthouses as the mark. A right-of-way boat may choose to pass an obstruction on either side. We'll give you an example of that in a minute. When boats are overlapped, the outside boat should give the inside boat room between her and the obstruction, unless she's been unable to do so from the time the overlap began. That's common sense, obviously. You stick your nose in somewhere and you're going to run out of water, not a silly place to stick your nose in the first place. So, in this case, yellow is the start attack boat. Therefore, he has right away. Therefore, to both the blue and the green boat, it's an obstruction. Because the leeward boat has control, he can do one of two things. He can hail for room at the obstruction, in which case the green boat has to tack. Or he can elect to pass the stern of the obstruction, because he has the option. In which case, if the green boat wants to go that way too, he must allow him room to go with him. He can't compel the green boat to tack and say, go away. So, running through quickly again. That's an obstruction to both these two boats. Leeward has control, because the windward boat has to keep clear. The leeward boat can elect to go to leeward. If he does so, and the green boat wants to go there too, he's got to allow room for him to do it. Okay? If the blue boat wants to tack and thinks, yeah, okay, this side's better, he hails for water, and we'll come to that in a short time. Well, boats are passing a continuing obstruction if a boat that was clear astern and required to keep clear becomes overlapped between the other boat and the obstruction. So if the obstruction is the shoreline, say, what that's saying is a boat that was clear astern and required to keep clear becomes overlapped between the other boat and the obstruction. At the moment the boat overlap begins, there is not room for her to pass between them. And this is where it's another silly rule. I mean, it's there, but it's common sense. And we've got to write rules about common sense. If there's not room for her to pass between them, she's not entitled to room. Well, when she runs about, she'll soon find out, won't she? While the boats remain overlapped, she shall keep clear, and rules 10 and 11 do not apply. So this is a limitation again placed on boats. We're talking about 2 of the 4 commandments, right? All of Rule 20 has been rewritten mainly for clarification. It hasn't really changed the game, but it's made sailing the game, I think, a lot simpler. When approaching an obstruction, the boat may hail for room to tack. One of the hails we have to make. And avoid a boat on the same tack. However, she shall not hail if she can avoid the obstruction safely without making a substantial course change. If she's sailing below close haul. Or the obstruction is a mark and the boat that is fetching it would be required to respond to change of course. So they're the restrictions on her. Responding. After a boat hails, she'll give the hail boat time to respond. So I hail for water. The hail boat shall respond even if the hail breaks rule 20.1. In other words, it's an improper hail. Why? Because this rule is a safety rule. We don't want people or boats barging others into the shore. And there may well be times when you want to use the second option. And I'll tell you about what I'm going to learn after we go through. The hail boat shall respond, either by tacking as soon as possible or by immediately replying you tack, then giving the hail boat room to tack and avoid it. Admiral's Cup, it wasn't 79, it was before that, it must have been 77. The Americans had these big boats with lift-up centreboards, and in the Isle of Wight, the current goes through at 6.5 plus. And what was happening was that they'd come into the shoreline, like so, and one's Aussie Yockers, and yell out, you know, water! And the ex would come back saying, you tag. And they'd go along the shoreline lifting up their centreboard. And they'd go along, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. The Aussies go, whee! So there are times when it's better to say you tag. You may know the water better than the other boat does. Although that didn't work for Harold Cutwood. But Irish vessel on the rocks, right outside his bedroom window, for God's sake. Anyway, that's fine. The headline in the Times the next day was Irish on the rocks. Irish whiskey on the rocks. Responding. When the hail boat responds, the hailing boat shall tack as soon as possible. So what you can't do is say, water. He says, oh yeah, okay. And then go, trick down. That doesn't work either. Huh? The time a boat hails until she's avoided the hail boat, 18.2 does not apply between them. So that goes back to this boat grounding stuff. That it turns the 18.2 rule, 18.2. Passing on a hail. This is new. Although it's always been known that you could by anything other than written down. If my hail affects him and I can't do anything because of him, then I can hail him. I can pass the hail on. But it's got to be on the same tack. So what you can't do is come up here and say, oh gee, I'll tack anyway. And then say water, because then you're on opposite tacks. Opposite tack rule applies, water doesn't. You have to be on the same tack in order to get rid of the obstruction. Exoneration. This is where we've now put exoneration into one little packet. When a boat is sailing within the room or marked room to which she is entitled under a rule of section C, she shall be exonerated if, in an incident with a boat required to give her that room or marked room, she breaks a rule, section 8 or 15 or 16, or is compelled to break rule 31, which is touching the road. So what that's saying is, you can be exonerated without having to go to the room in order to be saying, dispense. You're okay, you can stay in the boat room. Section D, these are still part of the restrictions placed on a right-of-way boat. When 22 or 23 applies between two boats, Section A rules do not. Wrong word. So if you're going to sail towards the pre-start side of the starting line, pre-start side, or one of its extensions after a starting signal, in other words, you're over early, then you shall keep clear of a boat that is not doing so until you're completely on the pre-start side. So you've got no rights if you're coming back. A boat taking a penalty shall keep clear of one that is not. Pretty elementary. They've clarified this by saying about moving a stern through the water. There was always argument whether it was over the ground or through the water that this will refer. So it's saying through the water. That's to clarify that bit. By backing the sail, so it's got to be backing the sail. The cats are pretty good at it. Tornadoes in particular. They could come back from a starting line situation, so, and put their hulls in there. So that's 2 hulls, right, with a beam in there. They were good. They could lock this guy out completely. Good fun. Capsized, anchored or aground. Will rescuing, if possible, the boat shall avoid a boat that is capsized or has not regained control after capsizing, is anchored or aground, or is trying to help a person or rescue the boat. The boat is capsized when a mast is in the water. Back to that Admiral's Cup thing, I convinced our guys from way back in the Admiral's Cup scenario that they had to take the black ball with them to say, hey, I'm an anchor. Because you could, for all intents and purposes, you could look at a boat and you think it's steaming. It ain't going nowhere. It's just all this current rushing back at them. They're holding their own against the current. They've got a bit of string hanging on the bottom. And you don't always know that unless they've got great. If reasonably possible, boat in operation shall not interfere with the boat that is. So if you're having the tinnies on the way back after the race, you've still got to be careful that you don't interfere with the boat that is racing. Except when sailing a proper course, the boat shall not interfere with the boat taking a penalty or sailing on another leg. We found that there were people who wanted to be real smart asses taking boats out on a different leg of the course and trying to. So we had to write a penalty. Other major changes for this year, the definition of finish has been changed, which together with a change to Rule 28, which is sailing the course, has removed the conflict between an ISAF case and an ISAF question and answer. I was chairman of the ISAF Q&A panel and wrote that decision that conflicted with an established ISAF case, which was an American one. The Americans were not really pleased at me writing something which contradicted one of their cases. In essence, what it means now, what the argument was, if that's a mark, say a windward mark on a course, and you're going around it, what the case said, if that's the finishing boat, that was actually a finishing line and you'd finished, even though you had 2 more laps to go, which I always thought was stupid. Because it said definition of finish was from the direction of the last mark. What last mark? To me it meant the last mark what was written in the sailing instruction. It didn't mean the last mark you went round. But that's what the case said. And we're fixing it. Rule 41, outside help, has been modified to allow boat to help our own crew member when necessary. The fear of litigation has caught up with us. The new Rule 48.2 has been introduced to require boats to comply with Rule 10, Traffic Separation Scheme of the IRPCAS. We've heard earlier tonight that there are no traffic separation schemes in Sydney Harbour. There used to be a traffic separation scheme, or what actually is a traffic management scheme, that Bradley said that was removed 1st of November last year. And the traffic management scheme, which is the entrance and exit to Sydney Harbour out of the heads, it's shown on 200 and 201 chart numbers. Then they are traffic management schemes, not traffic separation schemes. Therefore, 48.2 does not apply. There are 2 zones down in, 3 zones down in Bass Strait that are traffic separation schemes, and that's why they keep out of the way to oil reasons. So we don't need to worry about that. If anyone was here for last weekend or knows anyone was here, 2 weeks ago, please, if you could help us get that message around, because I said 2 weeks ago that they were. We've done homework and research, thanks to Maritime and Hydrographic Office and Mr. Kirk, who's been in touch, spent a lot of time on telephones trying to find the truth about these things. We've finally just established that we don't have to worry about the new Rule 48. Because we're concerned, if they were traffic separation schemes, CSS, getting out through the head, in a normal Saturday afternoon racing to nor'easter, it'd be bloody near impossible. You'd be reaching back and forth across the head. real sense. Anyway, we haven't had a problem with it, Maritime hasn't had a problem with it, let's just get it that way up. Just the ships in the rain, get out of the way. It's not a traffic separation, it's a traffic management system. Right, same as around the operations. Come back. Major changes have been not indicated by sidebars in the rule book. We do it all every time. The new rule books are on sale at boat books and ship shamblers and such places. So if you see a sidebar marking in the rule, unfortunately they don't come out when you did transfer them to PowerPoints, but it's just a sidebar marking. That means it's a pretty major change. Minor changes have not been indicated. Some for clarification, no real effect on the game as we've played it previously. There was some comment that I'd just like to finish with, and that was about that Rule 16 issue. One thing, when we first started to get involved in the Americans Cup, that's altering course, if you're preventing another boat from keeping clear. One thing we learned from the Americans, they had a not brilliant interpretation, but a theory, that if you're within 2 boat lengths of another boat, if you're a starboard tack boat, and you're within 2 boat lengths of a port tack boat, don't change course. Even if you wanted to take advantage of a windshield, don't change course. That's a pretty good guide. It's the best guide I can give you to help clarify that Rule 16 question. I probably confused it by bringing the starting line into it, but that was purely to try and show the difference between the old rules, where you had to anticipate that this starboard tack boat would come up to a close haul course in order to start. You didn't know where. I didn't know where, but you had to anticipate something, and the rules should not make you anticipate. Right? So, that's where we are. Thanks for coming, and hopefully you've learned something to help you with this argument.